All right, everybody, what's going on? And welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. Of course, I'm your tour guide around the swag Seawells coming at you. And we are on week 13. This is our week 13 preview. This is the final game of the regular season for 7 teams in the conference. There's 5 games this week, so 10 teams are in action. The other 5 teams out of the 12 have one more regular season game next week. And we still have the SWAC championship game coming up on December 7th, and then the Celebration Bowl. So the season is rapidly drawing to a close, but this is the most important time of the year. But for the first time in quite some time, both divisions have been wrapped up before the final 2 weeks of the season. So there's not a lot at stake in these games in terms of standings and things like that. So there's not a lot of high stakes, but there's still pride. There's still chance to go out a winner, and just finishing your season out on a strong note. We do have a few teams jockeying for 500 or better seasons, so this game could be vital for some of those teams who are kind of fighting it out to finish 500 or better. So there's still some things to be ironed out, but for the most part, the major things have already been settled. Our week 13 pick'em is active. The link is active. It's a pinned tweet on my Twitter, which is Swag Talk 76. It's also on my Instagram and my Facebook. Both are Swag Talk, and it's also going to be in the description below. So you can click the link in the description below if you choose to do so. Like I said, we got just three more weeks of football. So we're definitely looking forward to finishing this journey. Also, don't forget to like the video, comment, and share. Hit that notification bell because we drop videos not always on our Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday schedule. So definitely keep that notification bell hit so you can find out when any of those videos drop. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because it's greatly appreciated. So with that being said, man, we're gonna go ahead and get into this week 13 preview. I thought this preview would be, would have more games that meant more. But this is where we at. And so the first game we have is Valley and Alabama A&M. And for the first time this season, Valley's coming into this game off of a win. They're coming off of an upset of FAMU. And so it's gonna be interesting to see, how they come out and play. Are they gonna, I know the coaches are gonna do everything they can to keep these guys focused, but you're human, and you won a game that you probably should not have won. So the odds of kind of coming out maybe a little overconfident is always there. A&M is going to be a good challenge, so I think Valley's going to be locked in. But like I said, this is a rare situation. This game it can be seen on the Griot. Airs at 12 p.m. Central Time, so if you want to check that out, it's there for you. And when you look at both teams over the course of the season, numerically they're as different as you can get offensively. Now, those numbers and everything didn't mean a damn thing when Valley was able to score 24 first half points last week. But when you look at where this team is, most times the offense is last in scoring at 15.1 points per game. A&M's offense is second at 29.9. Valley's defense gives up almost 40 points a game, which is also last. Again, they've been playing better as the season goes on. They still giving us some points in games, but they've been a little bit more competitive. A&M's defense gives up 30 points a game. So the opportunity, if Valley can take care of the football to score some points, is there. The Delta Devils are 11th in total offense at 267 yards per game. They have 22 touchdowns, which is tied for the fewest in the conference. Alabama A&M leads the league in total offense with 449 yards per game. Defensively, Valley allows 452 yards per game, and the Bulldogs, they allow 350 yards per game. So that's 12th and 6th respectively. A&M's a great running team. They average 192 yards per game, and they're paced by Donovan Eaglin, who is on track for a 1,000-yard season. If you check out my video from yesterday, where I went over some of the upcoming milestones, then you'll see that this is a guy who has 792 yards. So he has 2 games left. A good game here will put him over, will make it easier for him to get over the hump next week. But he has the opportunity. He has 145 yards and 5 touchdowns against Pine Bluff. Had 126, I think, against Grambling. So he's a guy who can definitely, make something happen. Xavier Langford also has 275 yards and 7 touchdowns, and Isaiah Nono, I got it right this time. He had 221 yards on the season, and then Ryan Morrow is also in the mix, and Quad Brown can run the ball a bit too. So at the other quarterback. So there's weapons in the run game, and I do think A&M's probably gonna lean on that run game in a game like this. If you can establish that early against a defense that gives up over 240 yards on the ground, that's a good advantage for you. The Bulldogs average almost 5 yards a carry, so they can grind this out. But the one thing I know about A&M is when their run game is working, the pass game really gets to clicking. They lead the league in passing offense at 256 yards per game. They do have 12 interceptions on the season, which is the second most, behind only Valley, who has 18. So they have had ball security issues, but this Valley defense doesn't really force a lot of interceptions. They have 4 on the season. That's tied for the fewest in the league. And they give up 211 yards through the air, which is 8th in the league. They did a decent job against FAMU last week. That's another offense that's pass heavy. But I think A&M's run game is the key to this game. They should be able to get whatever they want on the ground, and that makes it easier for them to throw the ball. Valley's passing offense is 7th at 185 yards per game, and they're facing a defense in Alabama A&M that's also 7th, allowing 209 yards per game. Valley, they have some weapons in the passing game. Tajarian Williams, he's kind of had a sophomore slump, but he had a pretty solid game last week against Florida A&M. And he's a guy that has 9 touchdowns, but he also has 11 interceptions on the season. So he's had those issues with turnovers, but last week no turnovers. So it's possible that they can do it. That they can play a game and not turn the ball over. They won the turnover battle 3-0, which is something they haven't done most times. But Williams has 1,428 yards on the season, 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, completing 54% of his passes. His top target is Nathan Rembert. He has an opportunity to go over 1,000 yards this season in this game. He has 931 yards. He averages 84 yards a game. So an average game for him will put him over 1,000 yards. He also has 65 catches on the season and 3 touchdowns. Jackson Davis is a guy who has come on strong late in the season. He has 27 catches for 313 yards and 1 touchdown. Rembert is the guy that they go to. He's the big play guy. He has a 76-yard touchdown reception. He can make some things happen, and so he's gonna challenge that A&M secondary. But I still, like I said, I think A&M's ability to run the ball is gonna be key in this game. And A&M still has some things to play for. They have a possibility to finish 500 or better. Especially if they win this game. So this is a big game in giving them an opportunity to close out strong, and possibly have a winning record. And depending on how things shake out, they can finish 3rd or so. So they still are in good shape in terms of a strong finish. And if you're Valley, you're playing with house money really, because you're coming off of a huge upset. And so, you're playing from ahead for once. You're not looking for that first win. You got that under your belt. You're playing at home. It's senior day. You got an opportunity to make something happen against a team who, has shown that they don't always reach the level that they can. And I think, knowing that you can beat these teams gives you a little extra edge coming into this game. and that's why I think Valley will be dangerous. But I think A&M is going to pull this off. I think that offense is high powered enough, especially with the run game. I think they beat Valley 38-14. I wouldn't be surprised if Valley made this a game, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Valley found a way to win this game. But right now, when I sit here, I think the Bulldogs are the team that's going to win this game because I just feel like their running game is going to really control this game, and they'll be able to hit those big plays on the ground against a Valley run defense that really struggles um, to get stops. And that takes us to our second game of the day, which is Pine Bluff and Texas Southern. Um, this game is two teams who really want to close out with a win. I mean, obviously, TSU's coming off of a victory over Bethune-Cookman. So they've won, they've won a couple games here and there, but they haven't really had a great game since Prairie View, honestly. I mean, they did beat Grambling a few weeks ago, but that was a game that, was kind of up and down. Otherwise, they had the game against Southern that they let get away. And so, they have an opportunity again for a strong finish. This game can honestly go a long way in determining who finishes fifth or sixth in the division, depending on what Grambling does next week. The loser of this game is gonna if Pine Bluff loses this game, they're gonna drop to 2-6. And that basically puts them in that last spot because even if Grambling finishes 2-6, Grambling beat them, so they will finish ahead of them. If TSU loses, they'll be 3-5. And depending on what Grambling does, they can finish. They can finish last. Or fifth. So they're still, and there's still a possibility for TSU to win 5 games this season, which is a great mark for a team who a lot of people didn't think would win 2 games. I hate that they only playing 11 games this season because they could have probably finished with a 500 record, but they have they have that going kind of against them. TSU offensively still is, even with last week's win, they still only scored 17 points. Their offense is scoring 20 points per game. Pine Bluff's offense is at 23.5. Their offense can cause some problems for teams through the air, running the game, running the ball. They also have some guys who can make some things happen. But this team is very thin on defense. When I'm speaking of Pine Bluff, their defense gives up 36 points per game. TSU's defense gives up 29.8. The Golden Lions are so thin on defense that one of their top running backs is playing linebacker now. So they don't have the numbers to withstand any kind of game that they can't get the advantage a time of possession. And with TSU being a team that wants to run the ball, that could be a big factor in this game. Pine Bluff is 6th in total offense. They average 340 yards per game. TSU is last at 253 per game. Total defense, Pine Bluff is 10th at 430 yards per game. Texas Southern is 7th at 361 yards per game. Rushing offense, Texas Southern is 6th at 140 yards per game. And they're facing the Pine Bluff defense that gives up 218 yards per game. And again, like I said, this is a defense that's thin. They're very thin right now, and they really have struggled to get stops consistently. And when you're in that kind of situation, it makes it tough in these kind of games. I would expect a guy like Renfro to have a strong game on the ground in this game. He has 288 yards on the season and 3 touchdowns. Quinn still leads the team with 497 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jace Wilson has 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also, Jordan Davis has 135 yards and a touchdown. And like I said, this is a team that wants to run the football. When you look at TSU running the ball, they have 371 carries on the season, which is a low number compared to everybody else. But when you compare that to what they do through the air, it's still a pretty heavily skewed number. They've only thrown the ball 213 times this season, so they run the ball a lot. They don't really throw it a lot. Um, they only average 112 yards per game through the air, which is last. Pine Bluff's defense is ninth in passing. They give up 212 yards per game through the air. Of course, Pine Bluff bread and butter on offense is their passing game, or at least you can say that Hagen's Gibson connection. That's really what it is. They average 224 yards through the air, and they're facing a TSU defense that gives up 179 yards through the air. Now, when you look at what that 911 connection has done, it's really spectacular. When you look at Hagen's on the season, he has 166 completions. 66 of those are to Giovanni Gibson. 2,447 yards. 1,160 are to Gibson. He has 16 touchdowns. 8 of those are to Giovanni. So you see, they have a huge connection, and their other guys are also capable, but they just haven't really broken out. And I think that's one of the things that really hurts this team when you look at the fact that the teams are trying to take away Gibson. Nobody else has really done a lot. Amani Roan has 18 catches, which is the second most on the team. Damon Dawkins has 17. Christian Gamage has 16. Kareem Burke has come on late. He has 6 catches. But Gibson is their bread and butter. And I think the one thing that really kind of slows this Pine Bluff offense down is the fact that their offensive line really struggles to protect Higgins. They've given up 39 sacks on the season, and when he's under pressure, he's prone to throwing the ball, ill-advised passes, and he takes some sacks that obviously when you're under heavy pressure, you're gonna get hit, you're gonna take sacks, but he sometimes takes a bad sack trying to get away from the pressure, and that just slows this offense down. And the fact that they can't consistently run the ball, that kind of makes it easier for teams to at least attempt to contain Gibson. You're not going to stop a guy like that. You just want to contain him, and you don't want other guys to hurt you. So if you can pressure the quarterback, you're going to make him make mistakes. Even if it's not turnovers, it's going to be sacks or bad passes or anything that can kill a drive. TSU's defense, they have 17 sacks on the season, so not great at getting to the quarterback, but a game like this, the opportunities will be there. Pine Bluff, they only have 5 sacks as a defense, and they're facing a TSU offensive line that's giving up 24 sacks. So both teams kind of not great at getting to the passer. Both teams aren't, really kind of have a hard time protecting the quarterback from time to time. But TSU doesn't throw the ball a lot, so I don't think that's going to be a big issue in this game. Like I said, I think TSU's passing offense, even a game like this, I think it would be beneficial for them to be able to throw the ball, efficiently. You don't have to throw it a lot, but maybe throw it a little bit more. Be more efficient with it. Because right now Jace Wilson's only averaging 40. He only has a 49% completion rate. Which is not good. Trenton Leary and Jaron Johnson are the guys that really are the go-to guys in this offense in the passing game. 34 receptions for Leary. He has 2 touchdowns, 339 yards, 22 receptions for Johnson. No touchdowns yet. He has 230 yards through the air. Umar Yarrow has been a guy who's really stepped up big for TSU on the defensive side of the ball. He has 61 tackles on the season. He also has 4 tackles for loss. And I expect this defense for TSU to really cause Pine Bluff some problems. And it's going to be interesting to see how that side of that matchup is, because I think that's the strength of both teams, the defense of TSU and the offense of Pine Bluff. So that's like a strength-on-strength matchup. Whichever unit wins the other matchup, I think wins this game. Now, Pine Bluff's been really solid at home. They've played some solid games at home. They haven't won on the road, but they've been really competitive at home, and that could be the difference in this game. Um, I do think that if they can get BJ Curry and Weber going in the run game, I think that can really help take some pressure off the offensive line and protecting Higgins. But you still have to get the ball to Gibson. That's your guy. It'd be nice if Burke Dawkins or one of those guys could have a big game to kind of alleviate some of the tension that he gets. But I do think Pine Bluff. I'm going with Pine Bluff in this game because I think playing at home, they've been a much better team at home than they've been on the road, and they've been much better at home than they've been in 2 or 3 years. So I think they play comfortable at home. I do think this is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a high scoring game because I don't think TSU's offense is built to score a lot of points. But Pine Bluff's offense can score, but they also can get stymied. And I think TSU defense could at least slow them down enough. But I like to go to Lions in a score like 28-17. I think they pull out the win. No huge second quarter, no huge second half comeback like last season. So I think they can find a way to win this game without the last minute heroics that they needed last season in Houston to pull off that improbable victory over TSU last season. So that takes us to our third game, which is the Hornets of Alabama State hosting. Well, my slides don't look like. Okay, so we'll take that off the screen. No slides. It's just me. The Hornets of Alabama State are taking on the Panthers of Prairie View, and this game again doesn't mean much in terms of races because the divisions are wrapped up, but it's an opportunity for both teams to finish strong. And with Bama State having one more game after this, one more regular season game after this, they could finish 7-5. And it's also a big game for Bama State because they've lost to Prairie View 9 times in a row. You don't want to, you don't want to lose to anybody 10 times in a row. So breaking that streak is a good motivating factor. Prairie View has a chance to finish 6-6, which from where they started, finishing 6-6 and 5-4 in conference would be huge. Because this is a team that started off so slow, and they kind of got better as the season went on, and to finish 6-6 and in third place, most likely by yourself, it is a strong finish for a team that was basically out of the race by the beginning of October. And like I said, Bama State, they need a bounce back game after dropping the game last week and losing 2 straight. But I personally don't know the specifics of who's out for Bama State because of the fight last week. So that could have huge ramifications in this game. I guess I don't know. I don't know the names of anybody. If you know, then you can put it in the comments. And so I'm operating basically under the assumption that some vital guys will be missing for Bama State. I don't know, like I said, I don't know who, so I'm not gonna speculate what side of the ball may be affected the most. But I still think Bama State's defense is strong enough to help them in this game. And you're looking at a defense in Bama State that doesn't give up much. They only give up 18 points per game, and Prairie View's offense scores 22. Prairie View's defense, they give up 29 points per game. Bama State's offense is scoring at 22 points per game. So, like I said, the key to me is can Prairie View move the ball on this Bama State defense? The Panthers offensively, they average 323 yards per game. The Hornets give up 275. Bama State's offense, they average 304 yards per game. They facing the Prairie View defense, they give up 376 yards on the season. Now, last week, Bama State only threw for 4 yards, but they had a pretty solid game on the ground. They do like to run the ball. They're running attack. The numbers have gone down over the course of the season. Um, and right now they're averaging 172 yards per game. At one point, I think they were close to or over 200 per game, but now they're at 172. Prairie View's defense is kind of middle of the pack in rushing defense at 144 yards per game. So that's a good matchup there. Prairie View is at 116 yards per game. And of course, they're facing the top rushing defense in the conference at 106 yards per game. I really don't understand why Prairie View can't run the ball better. I think they have some really good backs. They just haven't been able to be successful at running the ball. And, I don't know if that's going to be a factor in this game. And last week, Jaden Johnson was pulled for Cam Peters. So you're coming into this game, with uncertainty at the quarterback spot again, and you're facing a defense that if you had to say there was anything that Bama State wasn't quote unquote good at on defense, it would be pass defense. But their pass defense is still extremely good. I mean, they give up 169 yards per game, so it's not like their defense is horrible through the air. But that's like one of the few categories that they're not first or second in. So, that's kind of quote unquote the weak link, but that's still a very good defense in all phases. I mean, they've given up 11 touchdowns on the season, which is tied for the fewest in the conference. Purview's offense is at 206 yards per game through the air. So that's a good matchup there. Purview defense gives up 232 yards per game through the air. That's 11th. And they faced the Bama State offense. Obviously, last week had a really bad showing through the air, but in previous weeks, their offense has seemed to be rounding the corner in the passing game behind Kareem Key, but Jackson State really made them very uncomfortable in the passing game. So that if they can get back to where they were before, then I think that can really help them out. One factor that I love in terms of a matchup if you Bama State is their pass rush against the Prairie View offensive line. Prairie View's offensive line gives up 32 sacks, and Bama State has 32 sacks. So again, I think the edge in this game goes to Bama State's defense. I don't really know how much I want to put into it in terms of individual guys because I don't know who's out. But I think defensively, Bama State has enough to get things going. Prairie View's offense has been a boom or bust type of offense, especially through the air. And when you look at a guy like James Burns, who's had a huge last couple of weeks, he has 29 catches, 461 yards, and 3 touchdowns. They didn't, like I said, they didn't really have a great game through the air last week, and I think it's going to be tough to do that again this week. They have to be able to run the ball, and they just haven't really been able to do that well as a team. Lamaje McDowell has 426 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's averaging 4.3 yards per carry. They just have to find a way to move the ball in this Bama State defense. Now, they've done it in recent years because they've beaten this team 9 times in a row. So where each team is coming into this game is also a big factor. And that's going to me, mentally, is a big factor in most of these games this week. Bama State coming off of an emotional loss and facing, losing guys due to suspension. Where their head is going to be at. Prairie View coming off of a tough loss. It's the last game of the season. They've been up and down. Where their head is going to be at. I think the team who can come out and be more focused and stay on task for this game is going to be the team that wins this game. But I still think Bama State has a better team this season. I don't know how. I don't think it's going to be a huge margin, especially because I don't know who's out for them. And also, Bama State offensively hasn't really been at the level that they were at in the middle of the season. So I think this is going to be another one of them low-scoring Bama State games. I like to score like 21-20. I think it'll be a close game. I think they do snap the streak, and they close out the SWAC season with a strong finish and send themselves into the Turkey Day Classic. Like I said, it's tough to kind of predict these games when you don't know who's out and who's playing. So you kind of go with the flow and see how you can come up with it. That takes us to our 4th game, which is the Florida Classic. This game is very interesting now. Before a couple weeks ago, I wouldn't say this was 100% FAMU win, but a few weeks ago, this game looked like Bethune-Cookman would have to scrap and claw to even be considered to have a chance in this game. Now at the FAMU dropping two unexpected losses, especially the one to Valley at home, um, and they've changed play callers. That kind of changes the trajectory of this team. Now they're sitting at 5-5 in conference. I mean 5-5 overall. So and 3-3 in conference. They're at a crossroads, and that's tough to say for a team that I thought would win the division. I did think they'd lose a few games this season, but they're at a crossroads. And again, this is one of those games where mentally, where are they? I mean, obviously they're coming off of a situation they haven't been in quite some time. That's coming off of multiple losses, and that just had a horrible loss. I mean, there's no other way to put it, and that's no disrespect to Valley, but this was a horrible loss. You don't lose to teams that are 0-10. You don't lose to those kind of teams at home. You don't lose to those kind of teams when you have a 24-game home winning streak. You don't lose to those kind of teams when you're at the time the defending Black college champs. I mean, that's over now, but you that just doesn't happen. And so it's going to be interesting to see, with them still having another game after this. Do they? I mean, obviously they're going to come in ready because it's a rivalry game, it's a classic. So I don't think they're going to come out flat or nothing like that. But if Bethune has some momentum in this game through the Rattlers, do they have that here we go again mentality? You know what I'm saying? Or do they buckle up and kind of do like they normally do when they kind of get behind, and that's get themselves back in it. And to me, that's where the saying goes: you can't let last week beat you twice. So they definitely can't let Valley beat them two times. Bethune-Cookman offensively is not flashy. They average 18 points per game. FAMU defense gives up 26. Bethune-Cookman defense gives up 33.5 points per game. The Rattlers at 22.5, which is so far off of where they normally are in terms of scoring the last few years. They just haven't really been able to put a lot of points on the board this season consistently. Their offense is third in total offense at 368 yards per game. They face the Bethune-Cookman defense that gives up 451 yards per game. But this defense has played really well the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. They had a really strong game against Grambling. They played a strong 3.5 quarters against Southern, and they played a strong game against TSU, giving up only 17 points, and still having the opportunity to win that game at the end, or at least go to overtime. So they've been playing better than their numbers suggest. FAMU defense is at 344 yards per game. The Wildcats offense is at 278. Again, that doesn't really mesh with where this team is right now. Speaking of Bethune-Cookman, they've been playing a lot better. Dennis Palmer has been a real key for this offense in the run game. He has 528 yards on the season and 2 touchdowns. He's averaging 4.3 yards per carry. The offense only averages 98 yards per game on the ground, but Palmer is a guy that can hit big plays. Ransom can do some things with his legs. Courtney Reese also is able to come out there and get him some key yardage. But I think the passing game the last few weeks for Bethune-Cookman has been solid. Ransom is completed 63% of his passes on the season, has 1,648 yards, 10 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. They've been pretty solid there. Malik Huggins has 30 catches. Thomas Nance at tight end has 32 catches. Lorenzo Jenkins has 23 catches. Those are the guys who are their go-to guys in the passing game. Of course, you have Darnell Dees, who they've been trying to put the ball in his hands in multiple ways, whether it's in the backfield or at wide receiver, because, teams aren't really going to kick to him anymore. So, you want to put the ball in his hands. And, FAMU's defense against the pass is pretty solid. They give up 169 yards per game. So they have been strong there. Um, and FAMU's a passing team. They don't run the ball much at all. We say it every week, but they don't run the ball much at all. They've only run the ball 287 times this season, which is by far the fewest. They throw the ball. Now it's going to be interesting to see how this offense operates with a new play caller. Are they going to run the ball more this week? Going forward, or are they gonna kind of stay more of a pass happy offense? Because I do think they have the guys to run the ball. You have Somerset, Franklin, and Dean are very good backs. I think they're guys who can really carry the load. Each one of those guys can do it for you. They all over 300 yards on the season. But this is a team that only has 2 rushing touchdowns all season. So they haven't, they just haven't really done a lot on the ground, and they haven't really looked to do a lot on the ground. Um, they've been getting it done through the air. Daniel Richardson is a really solid quarterback, has a great chance, depending on who you talk to, of being Offensive Player of the Year. He does, he has had some, some ill-conceived turnovers at times, but he has a good connection with a guy like Jamari Gassett, who is a big playmaker in the receiving game. He has 690 yards on the season and 48 catches. Ace Cobb, Kobe Gross at tight end. Also, Jeremiah Pruitt has been coming on, late. Quan Lee. They have a lot of guys that can catch the ball in this offense, and they're not shy about throwing the ball. And they're facing a Bethune-Cookman defense this season that's kind of had they've kind of had it rough as a whole defensively through the air. They're giving up over 220 yards per game. So the advantages are there for FAMU. Bethune-Cookman struggles protecting the quarterback. They've given up 30 sacks. The Rattlers have 17 sacks, which is not quite like they normally are in recent years. But the opportunities are there for them in this game. I just don't know where this team is. Like I said, I don't think they're gonna come out flat or nothing like that. But I don't know if Bethune punches them early, if they're gonna turtle because of the last 2 weeks. And there's so much uncertainty, and there's so much adversity going around right now. Can they answer the bell? I think Bethune-Cookman is gonna fight in this game, man. Not literally, because we had fights in a lot of games recently, but I think they're gonna fight and claw and scratch. And this game is probably gonna be closer than it probably should be, and it's probably gonna be closer than any of us thought it probably would be earlier in the season. Like I said, I just think last week is gonna have an effect on FAMU, and everything that's come after that. I think that's gonna have some kind of effect on them. But I do think they have enough to get by Bethune-Cookman, because one thing is Bethune-Cookman, they still make a lot of mistakes. They have the untimely penalty, they have the turnover, they miss a field goal here, they give up a big conversion on third down. Their defense allows 44% on third downs. So that's against offense that converts 41%. So the opportunity for FAMU to move the ball down the field is huge. Bethune-Cookman is only at 26% on third down. So you can't really expect this team to consistently drive down the field. They're going to need short fields. They're going to need explosive plays. And they're going to need all that stuff early. They're going to need a first half like they had against Jackson State, where they were 17-17. They're going to need a first half playing defensively the way they did against Southern, even though their offense didn't really do much because they only scored 3 points through the first 3 quarters. But their defense was very solid and very active in that Southern game in the first half before they started to wear down late in the second half. So they're going to need those kind of performances from both sides of the ball. And a big play on special teams would not hurt. But I just think FAMU, I think they have enough to slog through this game. I don't think it's going to be a pretty game by any means. Not, they could come out and, with fire in their eyes and, just, put belt to ass. You know what I mean? They could. I mean, they could be, they could be upset. They could be fired up. They could be, you know, extra motivated to make sure that this don't happen again, and come out and put on a show. Or they could come out and get punched early and fold. We don't know. I mean, we haven't seen FAMU in this position in a long time, so we don't know. A lot of these guys, they coming in because this team won last season, so they may not be ready to face that kind of adversity. That very unexpected at that. So I think that's what makes this game interesting, is that this game could go a multitude of ways, and a few of those ways do have Bethune-Cookman winning at the end. So I still think that FAMU wins this game. I think it's not going to be pretty. I like the score like 22-18. I think Bethune-Cookman they're just a team who is not quite there yet. But if you let them hang around, they can hurt you. If you put the pressure on them, I think they are not as dangerous as we think. And that's why I think it's going to be important for FAMU to put the pressure on Bethune-Cookman. Don't let them dictate this game. I think FAMU needs to dictate everything in this game. Otherwise, if you let this team kind of be in the mix, then you might find yourself on the outside looking in for a third time in a row. And like I said, the classics are both. I know both teams are going to come out fired up, and I know Bethune-Cookman is definitely. I think they see blood in the water. But nothing's worse than a wounded animal. So you can't discount a team whose back is against the wall, and so that makes both teams dangerous. And so I think it's gonna be a fun game. I think it's gonna be a game where both teams get after it, and whoever can not make a lot of mistakes. FAMU had 3 turnovers last week, so if they can avoid that, then I think that they can go a long way in winning this game and kind of right in the ship again. I mean, it's too little, too late, but I know 7-5 ain't great, but I mean it's a lot better than where you're sitting now. So I think the opportunity for them to finish third or second or third in the division, not pretty, but possible. So I think they still have a couple of things ahead of them to kind of get through, and I think they pull it out at the end. That takes us to our final game, which, before last week, I thought this game would be a huge determinant in the West Division, especially with Alcorn basically needing to win to keep pace with Southern. But since Southern won and they can't catch them, even if Southern loses on Saturday, obviously it's over. But I thought that this would be a game that gave Alcorn an opportunity to jump in the standings or to drop out of the race. And so that's out now. And now it's just the Soul Bowl. It's just 2 teams who don't like each other going at it. It's still a big game. There's not a lot on the line in terms of standings and conference and all that, but pride and rivalry stakes are on the line. So this is still a high stakes game. Jackson State, just like Bama State, coming in short, guys. I'm not gonna speculate on who's out. I did see a list of guys, but I wasn't sure if those guys are really the guys. So I didn't want to jump on that. So I'm kind of again operating that this I don't know who's out and who's not, but JSU has enough talent to still win this game. Alcorn, we know what they want to do. They want to run the football, and both teams are the top 2 teams in rushing. Jackson State averages over 207 yards on the ground this season. Alcorn is at 199. Jackson State defense only gives up 109 yards on the ground. Alcorn's defense gives up 165 yards on the ground. Again, not bad. I mean, that's middle of the pack. But JSU's gonna definitely want to run the football. Both teams have the most attempts on the ground this season. Alcorn has 444 carries. Jackson State 424. So I think both teams are going to come in here and line up and run. Obviously, the difference when you have a matchup like that is who can throw the ball. I mean, because at some point you're going to have to. And out of the two teams, um, Jackson State does it a bit better. They're a bit more consistent with it, completing 61% of their passes, 190 yards per game. They do have 22 touchdowns. So when they throw the ball, they're scoring more often than not. Because a lot of times when they throw the ball is after they've run it a while, and now you commit to the run and they hit you over the top. Alcorn's passing game has just been up and down. They have 55% completion rate. They only have 7 passing touchdowns this season and 152 yards per game. Xavier Vaughn, I think I don't know if he went down with injury or if they just pulled him last week, but him and Trey Lawrence both played last week, and so neither one of those guys is going to light it up through the air. Vaughn can hit the deep ball, and there's been times during the season where he was able to hit that deep pass, but there's also games where that just isn't there. And when it's not there, then that makes Alcorn a one-dimensional team, and it's still tough. Even when even when they're gonna run the ball, they still can do it. And if Vaughn's out there, that's an added dimension with his legs. He has 805 yards on the season and 11 touchdowns. Ja'Cory Sewell has 616 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then you throw in a guy like Truck Griffin who has 194 yards and 5 touchdowns. For Alcorn, they have to be able to pass the ball. And Jackson State defensively, it has been much better through the air as the season's going on. They only allow 166 yards per game through the air, and they have 10 interceptions on the season, and they've given up 14 touchdowns, which is the third fewest in the conference. So there's not a lot of success through the air for teams against Jackson State and Alcorn. Their pass defense has been rough this year. Right now, they're in the mix in terms of yardage, but they have been hit with some plays here and there. They are second in interceptions. So if there's an opportunity for them to turn the tide in this game, it's going to be forcing turnovers. This is a defense that really turns teams over. They have 11 interceptions and 12 fumble recoveries. So they have 23 takeaways this season. Jackson State has 5 fumble recoveries, and they have 10 interceptions. So they have 15 takeaways. If Alcorn can force turnovers, then I think that keeps them. I think that keeps them in this game. JSU hasn't really turned the ball over a lot, especially since that Grambling game early in the season. But with a team who is capable of forcing those turnovers, there's always that possibility that it may happen. I still think JSU Herb Mulligan is knocking on the door of 1,000 yards. He has 953 right now. I think he gets that in this game, and I think even with guys being out, I think JSU team. I think they're the more talented out of the two teams. Now, I don't. I think if there was any other game, before the SWAC championship game, I think guys would be unfocused. But again, this is a rivalry game, and you get a week off next week, so you don't necessarily have to worry about coming into that championship game off of an emotional game. I think playing Alcorn is definitely going to keep them locked in. I think everything that happened last week, I think playing against Alcorn on the reservation makes you put all that behind you, and you have to lock in, with the guys that you have going on the road and playing in a tough environment against a team who is going to bring it to you. Last year Alcorn beat JSU. The year before, they kind of hung in there with them. So I think there's always that possibility of Alcorn pulling this off. But because of the uncertainty, I don't know where I stand in terms of a score. But I'm going to go 28-21. I think it may take JSU a little bit to get going because once they find out once who's out is out, maybe guys are out who may have a huge effect in this game. I don't know, but I still think JSU is going to be able to win this game, and I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle. And so that's going to do it for today's show, man. I thank y'all for tuning in, and we will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.